Yuji and Nobara would arrive over to Sakurajima, the two sorcerers arriving to the area where the vengeful cursed spirit was spotted. It wasn't directly in Sakurajima, it was nearby though, as the manager set up a curtain around the building, an abandoned dojo. And both Nobara and Yuji had to admit they were a little bit creeped out about this. However, Yuji couldn't help but comment that this kind of felt like a movie he watched. For Yuji looked over to Nobara and told her that he wanted to try and see if he could talk to it first. If they couldn't, they'd eliminate the cursed spirit. Nobara nodded as well. She knew that quite well, and she knew that was their plan. Still, she took out a couple of nails just in case for preparation. But she figured there was a bigger chance that Yuji might be able to get through to them than her. After all, a martial artist talking to someone with enhanced physical strength like Yuji, it was a match made in heaven. At least that was the logic going on in her head. But as they entered deeper and deeper into the dojo, they could hear what sounded like fists clashing against a punching bag, over and over again, going according to a certain rhythm. That was a signal they had for Nobara to take a step backwards. She was going to offer support from behind. On the other end, Yuji was going to directly enter in, try and find the cursed spirit and try and get its attention. And he was able to find the cursed spirit pretty fast. It was an incredibly human-looking cursed spirit, with pure blue skin that had several cracks all across its body, as well as some small spikes on its back, but other than that, it surprisingly still seemed pretty human. Though the more Yuji looked at the cursed spirit, the more he noticed there were some things that just wasn't matching up to normal human proportions. Its arms and legs were slightly longer than it should be. And that was when Yuji called out the vengeful cursed spirit to get its attention, as it slowly turned towards Yuji Itadori, before cursed energy erupted from its body, causing the entire dojo to shift, as all of the doors around them closed, not allowing Nobara to enter inside. Even worse, Nobara could hear the sound of several cursed spirits, not vengeful ones but normal ones. She was going to have to deal with those while Yuji had to deal with this cursed spirit. And now Yuji had a better look at it, he could see that he couldn't actually see his face. It seemed like they were wearing some type of Oni mask, as the cursed spirit raised up both of its arms, not even trying to start a dialogue or conversation. As Yuji then asked if there was still a human left inside of there, if there was still someone he could talk with right now, or if they were fully just consumed by the cursed spirit. As the cursed spirit decided to ask Yuji a question. Has he ever formally been trained in martial arts before? He could tell Yuji was a hand-to-hand fighter and a hand-to-hand specialist, but he could also tell Yuji might be a bit unskilled. And once Yuji heard that question, he rubbed his head a little bit and shook his head no. He had been trained in a little bit of karate by his grandfather, but other than that, he hadn't really been trained. He just had immense physical strength. And hearing that caused a faint amount of disappointment to rise in the cursed spirit, before it rushed right towards Yuji, as both the cursed spirit and Yuji exchanged blows. Yuji attempted to land a punch right on the cursed spirit's face, but the cursed spirit was able to near effortlessly redirect it, while at the same time landing a palm strike right on his gut, winding Yuji in a single blow. But he didn't let Yuji go that easy, as in quick succession he landed another palm strike right on Yuji's gut, before landing another, sending him rocketing backwards. As Yuji dusted himself off, he had to admit that blow definitely hurt. As he thought to himself, this cursed spirit is stronger than the finger bearer. Not just that, I can feel it's more skilled than me as well. Maybe there is something I can learn from this thing. And surprisingly, the cursed spirit didn't choose to rush towards Yuji. Instead, the vengeful cursed spirit waited for Yuji to try and attack him again, analyzing his body and movements, trying to see if there were any changes in comparison to before. As now the second round began, Yuji and the cursed spirit rushed towards each other. Meanwhile, a swarm of cursed spirits are rushing right towards Nobara, as several of them tried to slam into her, but Nobara was able to dodge each of them rather casually. After all, it was common knowledge from the sorcerers that when curses were swarmed together, that meant they were weaker. But still, the more annoying part of this was that she couldn't go to support Yuji. Still, she was just going to have to manage here, as she slammed her hammer into one of the faces of the cursed spirits, killing it in a single blow. A soft smirk rising on Nobara, as she looked towards the other cursed spirits, lifting up some of her nails. As she yelled out to bring out as many of those weaklings as possible, she was going to eliminate all of them as fast as she could. And the cursed spirits took that as a challenge, as more and more began to fill the area. But that was exactly what Nobara had wanted, as she dropped several of the nails onto the ground, waiting for the cursed spirit's ult to reach towards her. Before she snapped her fingers as the nails erupted in a massive burst of cursed energy, cutting through several of the cursed spirits at once. And seeing that display of power, several of the cursed spirits began to back down out of fear, which caused Nobara to smirk a little bit as she began to approach them. She wasn't going to let these small fries get away that easy. Meanwhile, Yuji and the vengeful cursed spirit were fighting inside of the room, though the vengeful cursed spirit currently had the advantage. Each time Yuji tried to rush at it, it was able to redirect his blow, either redirecting Yuji's blow right back to itself or using it to deflect Yuji away while landing a blow on him. This cursed spirit was a master in using one's own momentum against themselves, and against a physical bruiser like Yuji, it was its worst counter. In most circumstances, Yuji would be able to overpower his opponent, but this was one of those circumstances where strength was not going to be his ally. And Yuji was realizing that rather quickly, as he was trying to think on some way around it. He had hand-to-hand skill himself after all, which was when he got an idea as he attempted to land another punch right onto the cursed spirit's chest. And the cursed spirit had to admit they were a slight bit bored. They were expecting Yuji to figure out some way to counter by now, or at least attempt something different, but this just seemed so obvious, as he attempted to redirect Yuji's blow away, but this time Yuji had something different in store. He relaxed his body completely, and began to move with the redirection, using the momentum to quickly spin himself and land a kick right on the cursed spirit's face. sending it rocketing backwards. As the cursed spirit blinked, it had to admit it was slightly surprised by the fact that Yuji was able to pull that off. As Yuji then smirked to himself, happy to see that maneuver worked. But seeing that, the cursed spirit decided it was its turn to go on the offensive, as cursed energy began to rapidly surround the cursed spirit's fist. A pure purple cursed energy made it look like it was set on fire, and Yuji focused cursed energy around his own fists as well. And right now, he had to admit he was feeling a bit inspired. This cursed spirit was a lot different than a lot of fighters he had seen in the past. Now granted, he still wasn't the most experienced person, but he could tell that this one was a little bit different. This cursed spirit was an expert at combining martial arts with cursed energy reinforcement. As Yuji couldn't help but wonder if he was able to perform the same types of martial arts that this cursed spirit was. He probably wasn't going to try it on the cursed spirit itself, mainly since it was a master at it, but maybe against some other cursed spirits it could be fun. As the cursed spirit then punched the ground hard, making an entire wave of smoke rise up. And Yuji remembered Todo's teaching. Something that a lot of sorcerers are used to doing was, instead of going by their eyes or their senses, was by using cursed energy sensing. Using that in order to telegraph movements. Yuji himself had a lot of advantages against most sorcerers though, mainly because physically he was a complete monster. He didn't have to put as much cursed energy into reinforcing himself, making it incredibly difficult to actually read him properly. But he used that in order to sense where the cursed spirit was, and he could sense the cursed spirit moving from side to side, before it came down from above, trying to slam its fist right down into Yuji. Leading Yuji quickly stepping back and landing a punch right on the cursed spirit's face. And while the cursed spirit was sent backwards, it quickly spun midair and punched his fist into the ground, using that to stop its momentum, leading right back into Yuji and the cursed spirit rushing right towards each other. As tens of blows were exchanged, the two of them moving all across the room as a blur of speed. But during one of the blows, Yuji ended up catching the cursed spirit off guard, as he grabbed onto its fist, using it to redirect its direction, while at the same time punching it straight in the chin, using its own arm to pull it into the blow. But Yuji wasn't done yet. If there was one thing that Yuji was, he was relentless. As he then released another flurry of blows, landing one on its stomach, then chest, then its arms, and then finally one on its head once more. But then the cursed spirit felt a change in the air, as suddenly Yuji focused a large amount of cursed energy right towards his fist. Yuji had never properly done this before. After all, he hadn't actually gotten the opportunity to do this, but now he did, as he landed a black flash right on the cursed spirit's chest, obliterating it in a single blow. And the cursed spirit was sent flying, rocketing straight into the wall. And it slowly looked up towards Yuji, and it felt it could die satisfied. After all, Yuji had definitely learned some things from this battle. He could already tell Yuji was going to carry on his own training, his own teachings. And with that, the cursed spirit began to fade. This mission had now been complete. As both Yuji and Nobara began to head back to Jujutsu High, sadly they weren't able to really get a way on how to stop vengeful cursed spirits from being spawned, but still, it was a successful mission nonetheless. And Megumi wasn't sad about that either. After all, there was always going to be more chances, and he was actually quite impressed. After all, he did hear about the fact that Yuji was able to land a black flash in that battle. And who knows, in the future they were definitely going to get more chances to be able to figure out how to stop vengeful cursed spirits. This was really the start of a good friendship. Megumi felt pretty confident they were going to be improving from here on out, especially considering they knew the higher-ups were no longer going to try and get in their way. With the warning that he offered to them and the fact that he knew no one other than Gojo would be able to stop them, and that Gojo was going to be on his side, he knew that they were going to have good times in the future. Or at least that's what he thought. But then another thought did come to Megumi's mind. After all, it had been a pretty long while since he heard anything about Geto. And while he wasn't too concerned about him considering their discussion, there was still a small part of him that was concerned. He knew ultimately Geto still probably hated humanity. All he did was deter Geto from going down the plan that he was originally going to go down. As Megumi thought that maybe he should have killed Geto, but at the same time for the past year he hasn't really done anything wrong yet, so there actually wasn't any reason to kill him. Still, he felt the need to train to eventually get strong enough just in case. He didn't trust Gojo to be the one to kill Geto. He felt there were too many variables in that, and truth be told, he didn't want to put that on Gojo. However, when they arrived back at Jujutsu High, somebody else was there that they didn't recognize, or at least someone that Nobara and Yuji didn't recognize, as Megumi did recognize them, Nanami Kento. Standing next to him was Gojo Satoru. This was a grade 1 sorcerer. And Gojo told them that he had a special plan in mind for them. While Megumi has definitely been helpful for both Yuji and Nobara's training so far, he felt that maybe somebody that is a bit closer to their level could definitely help them, especially considering the experience difference. So he pulled some strings and he asked Nanami in order to help teach them. He knew how much Yuji and Nobara wanted to catch up to Megumi, so he felt this might be an extra step that might be able to help them out. And hearing that both Yuji and Nobara decided to agree to this, they were curious to see what type of steps they could potentially make. They've already been getting pretty far with Megumi's help, but now that they could have Nanami Kento, a grade 1 sorcerer, assisting them as well as Megumi, who knew what they could achieve next? Megumi was happy for them as well. After all, this would definitely be a pretty good next step for them, especially considering Nanami was currently the Black Flash record holder. Though Megumi told him he was going to be busy for a little bit. He had been working on something else recently, a new way for him to get stronger. He was trying to get better at barrier techniques. After all, while he did have a domain expansion, he did have to admit he wasn't exactly the best at using barrier techniques yet. It was actually something that he was struggling a little bit with, so he figured he might as well do some training with that in his off time. Gojo told him he was going to help him as best he could with that as well. After all, pretty good to have a domain sparring partner with him. And with that, they all took off in order to prepare their next steps of training. As we now head back over to Geto's temple. Geto's numbers had massively increased. In total, he had over 100 sorcerers present here. Geto had been looking all across for different places, been looking at sorcerers completely dissatisfied with the current system, sorcerers who had people within the system that they despised. But most of all, sorcerers who wanted to be able to show off their powers more often, who didn't see any reason why they were defending the public and the weak. They had been getting more and more people recently in order to begin their next step of the plan. After all, for this next step in the plan, it was going to require quite a lot. And Geto was certain of one thing no matter what, even if he ended up dying, even if he ended up losing his own life, his plan was going to be a success, because he was about to change the world in a way that was going to change forever. But first he had to do some actions that were considered taboo even to Jujutsu society. But he didn't really care they were. After all, he wanted change to be brought to the world. Megumi had opened his eyes, and he made him realize that his plan wasn't going to work. So he had a new plan in store thanks to his ally. As currently present with Geto was Miguel as well as Kaori. As Kaori then asked if he was ready to start, and Kenjaku nodded. He felt he had gained more than enough cursed spirits in order to do this plan properly. Thanks to a certain ally they had gained from Kyoto High, a spy within, they had a way to begin this next plan proper. They were going to expose Jujutsu society to the entire world. As Geto called for all the sorcerers to come over, he explained to them that he was about to make cursed spirits attack every single major city in Japan. But the purpose of this was not going to be to hurt humanity. No, the purpose of this was to show sorcerers fighting. To expose the world to superhuman levels of strength. Even if humans couldn't see curses normally, they'd still be able to see the level of destruction they're causing, as well as the superhumans that exist in order to stop them. They were going to put on such a display of cursed energy and curses that it would become impossible to deny their existence. And the sorcerers all cheered. They knew exactly what this meant. Their day had come. Their day they no longer had to hide their abilities or just act as normal people had come. As Kaori smirked a little bit to herself, she could already feel it. This was going to be the return of the Heian era. She was also rather excited. After all, she knew how much fear and negative emotions were going to rise. Negative emotions were going to rise and swarm through the roof, creating curses never before seen. As all of the sorcerers cheered, they were rather excited for this. They were excited as they could finally show the results of their training. They were excited because this was going to be a new dawn, a new era where they didn't have to hide from society, where they didn't have to hide their powers. As Geto told them to make sure to save as many lives as possible, they wanted to make sure the sorcerers seemed like true protectors. This was only the first of many steps in their plan, to making sorcerers the only types of humans that could potentially exist. As Geto then activated his cursed spirits, releasing several of them out into the wild and sending them out to different cities. And each of the sorcerers prepared to take off. The main reason why he did that was to make it so be significantly harder for Gojo to track the cursed spirits coming from Geto. But even if Gojo was able to track it, wouldn't really matter either way. As in the middle of Gojo and Megumi's training, suddenly one of the managers stepped in, and they informed them of what was happening. All across the city, no, several major cities, several cursed spirits were attacking. And this perplexed them. This felt far too organized, which told both Megumi and Gojo one thing: Geto had to be responsible for this, but what was happening? However, there was one odd part of it to them that confused them. Geto was also fighting against the cursed spirits. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. They had to act in now. They had to be able to help as many people as possible. As a new dawn began, a new dawn and new era where the world knew about sorcery, where they wouldn't even have a chance to be able to keep curse energy secret from the masses. And heaven knows what would be the result from something like this. As Megumi couldn't help but think, what was Geto planning? After all, this was much different from his original plan, and he was still pretty certain that Geto was responsible for this either way. And Megumi didn't trust this for a second, but he was also now worried about something else: the higher-ups. He knew right now this was going to be a battle for the future. Whatever happened in this battle was going to be the first steps in deciding how human history was going to go. As he picked up his blade standing next to Yuji and Nobara, all three of them being sent off to Sendai.